Peter, hi. Eric Martin with Bloomberg News. I wanted to ask you about Clarium Capital and kind of your thesis for the economy going forward. Hedge Fund Research Inc. had reported as of September that the fund was down more than 10% this year, while hedge funds on average have been up. And I'm wondering what the investment thesis for the fund has been this year and why it hasn't been profitable, what hasn't happened that you still expect to happen, or what hasn't happened generally.
Well, let's see. There are a lot of different. This is like a whole nother speech, but I think the basic mistake that we've made this year that I think has certainly not been unique to ourselves, and has I think been true of an awful lot of investors who've been underweight equities and have underperformed the equity rally, is that people focused on the real economy, and there was a degree to which the financial economy has been extremely decoupled from the real economy. And so if you focused on things like unemployment numbers or consumer confidence or the contraction of credit or all these different indicators of what's going on in the real economy, you would be biased in an incredibly bearish direction. And there's been a very strange way in which the financial economy, valuation of assets, things like that, has been basically decoupled. And I think what is going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months, I do think, is one of two things. I think you will either get the real economy to see a V-shaped recovery, which seems odd to me, but that sort of is one possibility. Or you will, or I think the financial markets will see a significant correction as the reality that there's going to be no fast recovery somehow sinks in. But I think that's sort of the odd thing, and then I think it's a very long discussion of how these things could get decoupled. My sort of two candidates of why we've had this decoupling between the financial economy and the real economy, looking back on it today, are first that volatility in markets has come down tremendously, and that's actually an incredibly important variable. And so if you have a VIX of 70 versus a VIX of 22, even if nothing else changes, you'll get a big stock market rally, even if the profits are the same and everything else is the exact same. And I think the policymakers, while they haven't really solved the underlying problems in the real economy, I think they've done quite a good job in reducing volatility and sort of taking out some of the systemic risk, and that's helped probably more than I would have thought. But that's certainly been one big factor. I think a second macro factor that's been more important than people realize is that the one country where the stimulus spending was actually big enough to really reflate things was probably China, where they spent an enormous amount on the stimulus, and basically it was enough to sort of get the economy back to super fast growth, and that I think in some ways percolated out to much of the rest of the world, and I think sort of again one of the questions going forward is, can you reduce volatility a lot more? I tend to think you won't get many incremental gains from getting the VIX below 22. You can probably go down some, but probably not that much. And then is China going to keep spending, or is it going to start reining in its stimulus? And I again tend to think they're getting pretty close to the point where they will start reining it in. But I think those are the specific factors that I think drove this decoupling, and that we'll bear very careful watching in the next few months.
Peter, Norbert Barrios, Cohen and Steers Capital Management. I'm going to make reference to technological innovation and why it is stagnant nowadays. If you look at the last 50 years, practically every single technological innovation have stemmed from military research or from NASA. I used to be associated with that a long time ago, and I used to have technology that was today iPod or the iPhone. So the willingness of the government and the military to trickle down those technological secrets to the private sector has innovated technology in the United States. Nowadays, it's much harder to have the military to transfer that technology to the civilian sector. And if they are willing to trickle down more of that technology to the civilian sector, we will have a good future.
Well, let's see. There obviously are questions about this. Is again sort of we could probably have an hour-long discussion on the question about the degree to which the military drives technological progress. The question I would ask is actually, even if that premise is true or partially true, and I think there's some truth to it, and it's something that people probably don't think enough about. The question is whether the change has been in the amount of innovation the military is driving, or in its willingness to let it percolate to the rest of the economy. And I tend to think there's probably, it's unclear what major initiatives are going on that are analogous in scale to something like the space program in the 50s and 60s, or the DARPA stuff that got you the internet in the 50s and 60s, or the outlines of the internet. Obviously, there may be huge things that are going on that we don't know about them, but it would seem to me to be odd that there's something going on that scale that's being kept a complete secret from everybody in the United States and the whole world. And I think the more likely explanation is that in the military, as in so many other areas, there's just less going on than people think. Let's see, one more question out of time? End of session, out of time. All right, thank you very much.